Hey, everybody, this is Dr. Alex G. And before I get into our podcast today, I just want to say that I'm really flattered that a couple of young podcasters from the Chicago area, Kellen and Will, have been listening to our show, listening to Black Like Me, and they've actually given us a shout out. I checked out their podcast, Wild Wild World, and these are young, thoughtful millennials who have a lot of good things to say about current events. And so if you want to just hear the perspective of these young thought leaders, check them out. They're on the same platforms that we are. It's the Wild Wild World podcast. Check them out. I think that you'll get a lot from them. I certainly am. And I just want to say, hey, Will, I'm with you. I played soccer a little bit in high school, so I'm with you on this side of the debate. I'm a big soccer fan. Soccer rocks, and so we've got to keep supporting that sport. So, hey, let's get into our podcast.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, everybody. This is Alex G, and I want to welcome you to another segment of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. And I'm really, really excited to be able to present the guest that I have on the show today. First of all, I just want to say that I'm really, really excited about how the folks in our listening audience are responding. We've been having this little fun competition between folks from Seattle and LA and Minneapolis and Chicago and New York. And Seattle's really been showing its stuff. And so we're going to really need New York and LA to really step up. My guest today is from San Diego, so I think we're going to be getting some boosts down in Southern California. But listen, my guest today is a very special young man. He's special to me. I've known him since he was a college student, a college football player. My guest is Terrell Fletcher. He's a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He hails from Hazelwood, Missouri. He was on Camp Randall's 100, which listed recently 100 people who have shaped Camp Randall Stadium history across the realms of sports, music, culture, and beyond. Was a standout in the 1995 Hall of Fame Bowl. I think he was named the MVP there. He played with the San Diego Chargers, I believe, for 8 seasons. He'll correct me if I'm off on that. And this man attended seminary and is during his off season. So this man is playing football out in Southern California and going to graduate school in his off season, because that's really just how he rolls. He's a pastor. He's a thought leader. He's an author. He's a community influencer. He travels and speaks and offers keynotes. And I love the fact that he has a real keen mind. He's finishing up his doctorate in transformational leadership. I'm actually a part of his dissertation committee, so he's going to be defending real soon. He's all finished. He's written a great paper. But I'm really, really honored to have Terrell Fletcher in our studios. Mr. Fletcher, man, welcome to Black Like Me.
Man, Dr. Alex, thank you so much. That was an amazing introduction, man. I'm really honored to be here, and congratulations on the show. Doing well. The podcast is amazing, and from time to time we get to check in. So thank you so much for being you, doing the service and the work you've been doing as well.
Man, I appreciate it. I appreciate it, brother. Hey, listen, before every show, I do something that's called the Black Ice Breaker. Mm-hmm. And I just like to throw some questions out about black culture to my black guests. So I just got a couple questions for you. So you hail from St. Louis, Missouri. Do you know, or that area? Do you know what a St. Paul? Do you know what a St. Paul is?
Yes, I do. A St. Paul sandwich from the Chinese food shop.
and so it's an egg foo young. It's egg foo young with between what?
Between some Wonder Bright bread.
Oh man! All right. So you listen. We're gonna get some boosts in St. Louis now. I think that's just germane to St. Louis. I think only people from my studio, my white producers in the studio, look at me like, what the heck? Man, that is so funny. What's the longest time you've ever waited in a barber shop for a haircut?
Oh my God! Well, I have waited over 4 hours before for a haircut.
Oh my gosh! Just to get the right barber, because you can't just take any barber.
Just to get your right barber. But you have to remember this about the shop. the shop is an experience you want to have.
That's true.
So
That's true.
It's not drudgery waiting, because in the meantime you're solving every problem known to man and laughing in the process, and debating who was better, Michael Jordan or LeBron, and all those kinds of meaningless but extremely stress relieving types of conversations.
Man, you are so right. So you learn while you're sitting there. Man,
you really do, yeah.
So let me see, man. So you're about 10 years behind me. In your generation, did you all iron your blue jeans? I mean, like, were your blue jeans creased when you went to college? Were you into creased jeans?
No, we weren't into creased jeans. But here's the thing: because I'm a bridge generation guy, my journey started with creased jeans. But by the time I got to high school and moving into college, we had stopped creasing our jeans. Yeah.
Part of that was because you were in Madison and people didn't believe in creasing jeans. But I bet you. But did Myron crease his jeans?
Myron creased his jeans. Yeah.
Myron's your older brother. Man, hey, grits or cream of wheat growing up?
Cream of wheat.
Now, you're the first person on the Black Icebreaker who took cream of wheat, but that's right, because you all were suburban black people.
No, let me tell you what. Both my parents were from Arkansas, and I have no idea how we ended up with cream of wheat.
I don't either.
Grits. And to this day, I don't do grits. I would prefer cream of wheat.
You don't do grits. So do you put butter and sugar? You put butter and sugar on the cream of wheat?
It's butter and sugar, just like they were grits.
Just like they were grits.
We just did cream of wheat.
My goodness. Okay, so my generation had the Jerry curl, so that you only know about that through like watching old TV shows. But let's see. So when you were becoming a teenager, young man, did you walk around with a wave brush in your hand, like while you ordering lunch, while you waiting on the bus?
Absolutely.
Between practices?
Remember,
you standing there brushing.
I'm a generation guy, so I absolutely do remember people walking around with Jerry curls and their spray bottles. But my generation, man, we walked around with a big, huge, bulky brush in our back pocket, and you wore your wave cap around like you were cool and thought you were somebody. But we also were the generation that had the kid and play haircut.
Oh, the high and tight, the box haircut.
Yeah.
Oh man, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I did both of those.
You did both of those, man.
I did them both.
when you were growing up, did you have play cousins that you didn't realize were not your family until you got of age?
Man, I still got play cousins, and if you tell me they're not my family, we're gonna have a problem.
I know. Okay, so I won't even tell you that they're not family. Were any of them named something like Main or John or Mookie or Junebug or
Pumpkin, Teeny? Yes, those are the names.
Oh, I forgot about Teeny. I gotta add Teeny. Hey, Eli, did you know any of your friends or cousins were they called Teeny or that when you were growing up?
No, I can't really say. Maybe different kind of nicknames, but not.
Gosh, man. Hey, one last one, Mr. Fletcher. Have you ever encouraged a respected friend of yours to bungee jump when he shouldn't have been? At the San Diego County Fair.
I've encouraged. Yes, I have. I've encouraged a friend of mine to bungee jump. I've encouraged my friend to live his best life, to live authentically, let himself go and have the most fun he'd ever have in his life. And when he did it, all his life changed. Now, his wife might hate me for it, but
definitely
he had a time of his life when he did it.
Man, I hung upside down on that crane because you told me I still got varicose veins or whatever it's called. That thing messed my legs up. You didn't even do it. You just said, I dare you. Because that's like the code we got. Like, you ain't built like that. That's like a code we had to try. You ain't built like that. Like, what, you talking to me? Yeah, you ain't. So I had to go up. The crane wouldn't even open. I had to wait for it to open. Stood in line.
Mm-hmm.
You even said you pay for it. Like, man, if you do it, I'll pay for it. Had to go 13 stories and jump off that crane just because I didn't feel like hearing your mouth the rest of the night.
You took it like a boss. You did it.
I did it.
But to your credit, I had done it twice before. So remember, it wasn't like I asked you to do something I had not done before. But yeah, you did it like a boss.
Man, remember that time? Man, we went some amusement park, and they hoisted us like way, way, way up in the air. It's like a swing, like it was a giant swing. Man, and they dropped us. It was like a free fall for like 20 or 30 minutes. And I said to you,
Knoxbury Farm.
Yes.
You and I remember we went to Knoxbury Farm here in California.
Yeah, I said, Terrell, now, I know my pastor.
One of the most impactful moments of my life.
I said, now, some things might come out my mouth that are not necessarily pastoral, but I don't want you to hold it against me. Man, that thing was crazy. That was fun. That was crazy. Well, man, okay.
Pastor Alex, I'm sure we'll get into it at some point, but I'm telling you, one of the most transformative conversations of my life that helped me mature in my quest for manhood happened on that weekend, the night after we left, and it all started with a young lady and her pickle, and we got. You remember that? We dialogued about that. Hours after the park, it changed my perspective and helped move me in a direction that led me to where I am today. So, well, I'm sure we'll talk about it in a few minutes, but I just want you to know I will never forget being out at Knott's Berry Farm.
Man, I won't either for some different reasons. You had a life-changing experience, and I needed to have a clothes-changing experience. Man. So listen, so for these questions, Terrell, I just want to just shoot out some quick ones because then I want to get into some more philosophical things because I love your mind and how you think about things because you're a thought leader. But just a couple of quick things. What did you want to be when you grew up as a kid? What did you dream of becoming?
You'd be amazed that there are only 3 jobs I ever dreamt in my entire life.
Really?
One was being a professional football player.
Okay.
The second was being a pastor, and the third was holding some type of community public office. The only 3 things I've ever dreamt about my entire life.
That's really amazing. That really, I didn't know about the pastoral piece because I know how you fought part of it, like many of us do. But man, that's exciting. No, that's great.
You know what's interesting? What's interesting is sometimes sometimes you have these thoughts as a child, and as you get older, you just think they were just childish thoughts.
Right.
But I used to, the same way I mimicked Tony Dorsett and other football players back then. I used to mimic pastors.
Did you
like
really?
Bishop Columbus Williams and Bishop Wooten and just pastors that had a lot of charisma in the day that I was growing up back in St. Louis. I would mimic them and play church in the mirror and things like that. And as you get older, you just think of stuff you did as a kid.
Yeah.
But when I started to move into ministry and accept the calling into the pastorate and things along that line, you just look back and say, wow, man, this was always something that was deep in my my psyche and in my spiritual DNA.
Man, that's powerful. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Was football always your sport of choice? Because I know a lot of gifted athletes are 2 or 3 sport athletes. Was football always? Was it your first sport?
It was the sport I loved the most, yeah.
Okay.
But I was actually a better wrestler than I was a football player. Coming up,
really,
my brother and I wrestled more than we did play football. And I sort of took the journey into football, and my other siblings soon followed. But my oldest brother went to college on a wrestling scholarship. Of course, he was my hero growing up, him and my father. So I wrestled throughout middle school and actually elementary school. I think I started wrestling maybe the 3rd or 4th grade throughout high school, and eventually I stopped because football was just had more promise, and my heart was with the sport. But those were the 2 main sports, and I didn't play basketball primarily because basketball and wrestling were the same season. So that was the other reason. But other than that, of course I. Just like everybody else in the community, man, you toss the football around and you play basketball. So I could kind of do all 3 of them.
Sure. I know a lot of football players also were sprinters in track, but you never ran track in high school?
No, I enjoyed wrestling so much that I actually did a traveling team in the summertime.
Okay.
So I was too small to play football, to be honest with you. In the 8th grade, I was barely 100 pounds.
Okay.
Good. And when I went to high school, my freshman year, I think I was 130 pounds by the time. So wrestling just suited me better because of the size, differential between me and the guys that actually play football. And so that for me was, I wrestled during the wintertime, obviously. And then when the spring and summer came, it was a great way to stay in shape and you could travel. And then when I started to gain a little bit of weight, and 130 pounds, I think I went home one summer, came back 25 pounds heavier, which was kind of my MO until I graduated high school. I gained about 20 pounds every off season until I graduated.
Wow!
And on accident. I wasn't even doing it on purpose. I just started growing late.
Yeah, man. Man,
but yeah.
No, that's good to know about that background, because I know that you're gifted in that area. So I was certain that there were other sports that you were good at. Are there any athletes that are still around who just make you sort of starstruck? Because you move in key circles. You're in Southern California, so are there athletes that you bump into? Let's just say in the NFL today, that if you bump into them or you've seen them and you think, wow, that's a real talented athlete, or maybe
Oh gosh, yeah. I just had a chance to meet Antonio Brown, wide receiver with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he is one of the best wide receivers to play the game since Randy Moss, in my opinion. Of course, this guy, Beckham with the New York Giants, he's probably the best athlete to play the game since Deion Sanders.
Wow.
Just super phenomenal skill set. Yeah, there's some guys out there that are just super fun to watch. Those two are probably my two absolute favorites to watch. That are wide receivers. And, of course, what Tom Brady does is phenomenal to me. I think he's like defined Father Time, which is nobody could ever do. He's staving off the clock. So his genius, his greatness, it's fun to watch those guys too. But there's some great football players out there right now, and the style of the game are giving these guys opportunities to really show a style of athletic talent that we didn't get to show when I played, just because the way the game was structured.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Terrell, you come from an amazing family. I've had a chance to meet your mother, your dad, Mr. Jose. I met all your siblings. Like you said, Myron went to school on a wrestling scholarship. Brian won a Super Bowl ring with the Colts. Sean, got it. Played football in college as well. Got his doctorate degree. I don't know Tracy as well because she's the baby. She's the youngest. But you come from just an amazing family. Just tell me a little bit about how you think that set you up for being a strong person and has set you up for your success.
Well, certainly as it relates to teams, that was the first team I played on with my family.
Great way of looking at it.
And learning all of the tools and all the nuances of what it means to share and to rely on your other teammates or siblings, genius, to have a sense of responsibility to something bigger than yourself. Home was certainly that space for me. My parents were almost like our coaches. In that they set expectations and they pushed us to go get them, and there were consequences if we did not put the effort forward to try to achieve them. So failure was never, but we never got in trouble for failing. We would get challenged for not trying though.
Okay,
and that was really the foundation for me of seeing that working together towards something produces the type of love that can last. And we all worked to make that Fletcher household work. And our underpinning value system was Christianity. Like, we were Christians. My parents were both born again, and they taught us, to express that in everything that we did, whether it was our athletic or academic pursuits, serving humanity, whatever it looked like. We were that was kind of our underpinning, and that came from my parents. So as far as that's concerned, I'm just super proud of them as well. While we're just like any other family, there's nobody that's perfect. I'm still very proud because everyone has a secondary degree. My sister and, as you mentioned, my youngest brother, they both have their doctorate degrees.
Right.
I'll be finishing mine hopefully within the month. And everyone is serving humanity in some form of fashion or working in their passion in some form of fashion.
That's fantastic.
So I think that's the sign. That's the sign that we're trending in the right direction. Again, nobody's perfect. We have challenges and we have had setbacks throughout the years, just like everyone else. But we've supported each other through it. We have managed to see the bigger picture. We've managed to see that winning the game is more important than who gets the most yards. And that's the way that has really shaped my perspective on life, shaped my perspective in relationships. Even as a pastor, the way I do ministry and do church, it shaped my perspective that I look at life and I look at my connections and relationships like we're teammates. And like we're on a team, and I see the sign of that, man. No, because
I mean, I think about your parents and I think sometimes, when I imagine when you and Brian had some overlap, you both overlap for how long in the NFL?
3 years.
3 years. So I was thinking like at Thanksgiving, y'all must be like the Manning family. Like how many families come together and then have like two sons in the in the NFL, and then you got Sean and Tracy, earning their doctorate degrees. I love the way that your parents have, just are proud of all of you all. So Sean and Tracy and Brian and Myron and you, and that pride comes out. So I think that's just very, very strong, because it just reminds us as leaders or as family folks that what we do and how we set expectations really charts the course of folks in our community. So you had this strong background. You got a scholarship into a Big Ten school, Division I school. You played in the NFL. Is my math right? Was it 8? Was it 8 seasons, Terrell?
Yes, 8 seasons.
8
with
seasons. San
Diego Chargers.
Yeah, with one team. Yeah, so you did 8 seasons with one team, which is, I think that's fairly rare. What's the lifespan back in the day? What was the lifespan of someone playing in your position in NFL? Wasn't it like 3 or 4 years?
Well,
or the average. I should say the average.
In general, it's the lifespan is 4 years. For running back, is somewhere between 2.5 to 3 years. But it's it's a short. Professional sports is a short shelf life all the way around. So I felt very blessed to spend any length of time, let alone to make it to 8 years.
8 years. So now with that great background, do you feel any pressure to be a role model? I mean, you are, because people look up to you. But when you get up and go about your day, do you think, man, I'm a role model, so I need to think differently, dress differently, act differently? Does that come up in your daily life?
Interestingly enough, Pastor Alex, no.
Okay.
I was one of those guys that just embraced it.
Sure.
I embraced everything that came along with it. This was the path that I chose in professional sports, or sports period, was the path that I had chosen. And what I just hoped for is that I didn't make the quote unquote big mistake, right? But I wanted to live very authentically. I wanted to be responsible to my lot in life. And fortunately for me, that happened. And I didn't put too much pressure on myself to be an absolutely perfect human being, while at the same time, I have throughout the years tried to handle the responsibility of knowing that this is a unique and privileged position in society for whatever reason, and I should handle it that way. It's a blessing, not a thing to be begrudged. So, so I just try to embrace it. I try to embrace all of it with humility and with gratitude. I just try to say, hey, this is part of the journey, and just like anything else, if you want to be a good football player, you have to embrace the soreness, and you have to embrace cuts and bruises. If you want to play at the highest level, you also have to expand what you have to embrace, which is public scrutiny, some sense of role model and responsibility, and things along that line. I took it, and I found a lot of joy in trying to lead that way. And even to this day, in the spaces of influence that I have now, I've just tried to embrace it and take it and say, hey, this is my lot. Let's do it. Let's be the best at it. And let's help people do good stuff by being good. Yeah.
No, man. That's really great. That's good, man. I want to ask you, because we hit upon this a little bit earlier about like people who have influenced you, and you're talking about you alluded to a little bit about a discussion we had at Knott's Berry Farm. We hung at two places. One time we must like amusement parks. It was Knott's Berry Farm, and it was also the San Diego County Fair. But who influences you or helps you to be the best you can be, or who's helped you to be the best you can be in recent years? The kind of people you look up to.
Oh gosh. In recent years, interestingly enough, my dad has been a part of my journey my whole life. So
yes.
he serves somewhat as a mentor, friend, head coach role. He's been all of those things to me. And for some reason, not many things light my fire like when my dad comes and says, hey, you got to make it happen.
Yes.
And if he puts and applies some pressure, I just respond. He has that voice for me, even as he's getting a bit older and he's moving into his mid-70s now.
Wow.
He still has the ability to make me sit up at the edge of my seat and take notice make me try a tad bit harder, or make me, have some introspective moments when I'm to the left a little bit. So he's been constant for me, and I realized that as an African-American male, in some senses, that is a tremendous blessing and almost like a unicorn nowadays.
Sure.
So I honor him for many things, not just being a part of the job, but sticking in there with all of his children. And he's very present, not just to me, he's been present to all of us. And he's matured along the journey with us. It's funny that we oftentimes think that parents are there to help guide their children into maturation, where a good parent also allows their children to guide them into their next dimension of maturation as well.
That's very true.
And watching him grow over the years with us, it's been fun, man. So he has qualified himself to be the fire starter in my life, and at this moment, nobody has really taken the throne from him as far as that's concerned. But there are many people that influence me, many people that excite me, many people that are very motivating.
Sure.
You being one of them, one of those people that are very motivating in my life.
I appreciate that.
Are fun to watch and are fun to get their wisdom from. You've been a guide and a mentor for years as well. I mean, literally since I was 21 years old, you've been a part of my journey. And I don't make many major decisions without reaching out to you and letting you know what's happening.
You sure do. You're good at that.
What's on my heart. Yeah.
Man, I appreciate that. So talk to me. Remind me about because I'm almost 55. Remind me a little bit about the pickle discussion. Like, I can see parts of that, but there are pieces I've forgotten. You said was really key. I don't get into any of the personal stuff, but what were some of the key things about that conversation? Because, man, I was so shook up after jumping off that bungee cord. There's parts of the pickle. We've had so many good discussions that I remember one back like.
Story short, we had went to the the cafeteria, and a young lady that was a few spaces in front of us had a hot pickle, and of course I knew they weren't selling hot pickles at the amusement park, and I very much wanted a piece of her pickle. And
this is a family show, Mr. Fletcher. This is a family podcast.
It is family friendly. For a second there,
once a jock, always a jock, huh?
I used some influence, misguided influence, to get her to offer me her pickle, and you just watched it. And
I remember now. Okay,
you do remember now. You watched it, and later you just challenged me about the power that I had and about the influence that I have, and reminded me that was a gross misuse of the influence that God had given me in the position God had put me on this earth for. And you just told me, man, you can really change a lot of people's lives for the better by using that influence, or you can just manipulate people out of their pickle all day long. That's a wait. I want that to be an episode. Manipulating people out of their pickle. That's it. So you write that down. Eli, I can tell you writing that down. Dang, man. Terrell, so there's I got so many other things to throw at you. So you transition after 8 years from being in the NFL. You gone to grad school. You answered this call to be a pastor, but you're transitioning out. And again, playing a professional sport in any market is highly visible. But you're playing in Southern California. At the time, LA didn't have a football team, so you were mingling with NBA folks, and there's so many things that you were doing. You were part of telethons and stuff. But when the athletic world was no longer part of your identity, because you had played in middle school, high school, college, and then the NFL, you had to really rediscover who you were. Is that what led you to write the book of you? I mean, was that part of the process of transitioning out of the limelight of sports into ministry or other aspects of your business and career? Absolutely. I wanted to chronicle some key pieces. I wrote this book called The Book of You, and I wanted to chronicle some key pieces about dealing with that a transition season of my life.
Right.
And for me, again, the thought is that you just need to go and get another job. And what I realized is that I didn't need another job. What I needed was to redefine my identity for every season that I was in.
That's powerful.
And that was my challenge. And so, no, it was only difficult in the sense that I needed to accept and to trade in the identity that had always been inside of me. I just didn't want to take it, which was that of ministry.
Sure.
There's a story in Scripture that really blesses me regularly, and while I know this isn't a Christian show, it will still be a great
be yourself. Be yourself. Go ahead. Preach.
So there's a story where Peter is talking to Jesus, and Jesus tells Peter that, hey, his original name was Simon, and Peter says, hey, I'm not going to call you Simon anymore. I'm going to call you Peter. And basically what Peter means is, you're like a chip off the rock. You're like me now. Mm-hmm. And he gives him all of this authority and power that's associated with the identity in that name, Peter.
Right.
And Peter falls. He makes some mistakes along his life, and he shows up about a year or so later, and he tells them that I'm going back fishing. And what he was saying when he said I'm going back fishing, what he basically meant was I'm trading in the identity of being Peter and being this big, strong guy that's like fighting for the cause of Christ and all that kind of stuff. He's like, I'm trading that, and I'm going back to being Simon. I'm going back to being the fisherman. I'm going back. He was essentially rejecting his identity,
right?
And
reclaiming his old identity.
Absolutely, he was claiming his old identity. And the great part about that is when Jesus shows up, him and Jesus has a conversation at the edge of the beach, and Jesus asks him like, "Hey, Peter, do you love me?" And Peter's like, "Yeah, of course I love you." And he tells him to feed his sheep. But what he was essentially telling him was, "Well, pick up the identity I gave you." And he says, "Yeah." And Jesus asked him 3 times, "Hey, man, do you love me?" And he said, "Yeah, I do love you." And Jesus essentially said, "Well, accept the identity that I gave you. Why are you out here fishing when I called you to be, something different, and I empowered you to do something different with your life?" This was my battle. This was the battle that I found myself at 31 years old, is that I could have went and got another job just like Peter did. In fact, I did. I went and got a couple of them. Became a sports announcer, went and started doing a lot of real estate, which in that time was the hot thing and the trendy thing to do. And I was pretty good at both of them. The problem was that they were not connected to the identity that God had called me to in that new season of my life. And for me, that identity was really connected to ministry. It was connected to service, connected to humanitarian work. And I just wanted to reject it because the sexy thing to do for a pro football player was to go be a TV announcer. The cool thing to do was to go ahead and keep making big money and get you a TV show. So the battle was wrestling between my Simon and my Peter was the challenge for Terrell.
Sure.
I wrestled back and forth saying, hey, man, that's not what I want to do. And ministry is not the way I've repositioned my thoughts. And God just had to kind of reconnect me with how I was always created. And I'd always been created as a giver. I'd always been created as a thinker and a teacher.
How long did that take?
I was created with compassion. And that led me back into a space of being able to accept that this is something I can do. This is something I should be doing. And for me, that was the journey. It was the journey of recapturing the identity that God had for me instead of the identity that seems like the environments and communities around me were trying to force me into.
And you didn't treat it like it was a plan B. Well, okay, I'm finished with the NFL, so let me go buy a car dealership or become a sportscaster or go into ministry. This wasn't plan B. This was developing inside you, which is probably why you were, going to grad school and studying theology while you were in school. So that's, man, how long was that wrestling period between leaving the NFL and then really feeling that you accepted that new assignment, which had been there your entire life? Was this a year? Was it a couple years?
If I'm honest about it, it took me probably about 4 years. And it started while I was playing. It started while I was in seminary school and in classes because I remember trying to rationalize to myself why I'm extending all this energy on seminary, because all of a sudden I had this intense desire to study, this intense desire to know deeper truths of Scripture and things along that line. But at the same time, in my head, I was like, but this is not what I want to do. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go out and I'm going to be a TV model when I'm finished, and I'm going to do all these other things when I'm finished. But I'll be a good, contributor to my local church. That was my perspective. I'm going to be a good deacon or a good, assistant at my local church. And that's how I rationalized how much energy I was putting into my seminary studies.
You're just going to be real thorough.
I probably had another 2 years of kind of wrangling with myself and really deciding that this is a journey that I need, that is most germane to who I am, and it's core to who I am. And no, I don't want to be a coach, and no, I don't want to go into television in this format, the format that all the athletes were doing back then. It's like, no, I'm going to pass on that. And again, while this may be a lesser profile job, it still is one that resonates very deeply inside me. So it took me a couple of years, anywhere from 3 to 4 years for real. But let me say this point, Pastor Alex. The transitions, this is not only germane to professional athletes.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Dealing with transition is germane to everyone, to the person who just got laid off from his job and has to figure out what's next, to an empty nester who now doesn't have any children at home and she's got to figure out, what do I do? I've been a mommy for the last 19 years.
Right.
Who am I on the other side of marriage? Or someone that's been divorced. Who am I on the other side of being a husband or a spouse? Who am I on the other side of death?
We all have to do this.
So absolutely. So transition happens in lots of different ways, and it shows up with regularity. And how we deal with transitions is critically important to the continued continuity of the sense that we're walking in purpose from day to day.
So it's not the transition, it's how we lean into the transition. Remember TD Jakes used to talk about how we lean into certain kinds of issues. So what I'm hearing you saying is that we all face transition, but if we don't lean into it right or learn from it, that's what's destructive. And not losing your job or leaving the NFL or having a divorce or losing a loved one. It's how you learn to adjust and respond.
Absolutely. The mechanics for transition are very different than the mechanics of the straight way and the norm. Think about it like if you're driving on the highway. If me and you are in the car together, and we're trying to get somewhere in town that requires us to jump on the highway, jump off the highway, and navigate our way through a city. Think of life as being that kind of journey. When you're on the highway and everything is a straightaway, we can blast the music, we can laugh and talk about random things.
Right.
But when it's time to get off the highway and navigate through the city, we're about to go through a different transition.
Right.
And what happens then is you turn down the radio, you stop with the idle conversation, you kind of start to hone in on, okay, we have to make a left here. Hey, is that the light? Yeah, we got to make a right there. A different type of communication has to take place in transition, that it doesn't have to take place when you're just in a normative season of your life. And so the mechanics are different. And one of the things that we teach people is to notice when your life is moving through transition. Maybe, you're going through a hormonal transition, or maybe you are in a life stage transition for men or for women. Maybe, something catastrophic has happened where life will never be the same. You lost a child, or we tell people to take notice when you've gotten off the highway. Right. Because
that's when you got to pay attention.
Absolutely. Now the mechanics and the kinds of communication and dialogue, et cetera, it requires something different. And you can't keep going in these spaces as if life was normal.
See, and that's what I see people doing.
And nobody taught me that. I didn't see that. I didn't realize that. I just thought that, I'd just keep on going and have to sit quiet with myself. I wouldn't have to do self-assessment, introspection. I wouldn't have to have important dialogue and conversations. But life had changed for me, and I needed to shift with it. So, I leaned in. That's the long way of saying I leaned in with it.
Well, one of the things, a number of things I appreciate about you, but you addressed the transitions with the same level of tenacity with which you addressed playing at a Division I level, in college playing in the NFL level, that you gave it your all, and that's important. And and speaking of transitions, like church looked different when you and I were growing up. As a big focus on growing churches or working inside. I mean, I remember when the situation happened with Michael Brown in Ferguson, because that's near your hometown, and you were drawn back to the community. Something big had happened in San Diego and Ferguson. I remember you talking to me about, man, two places where I've lived, some things are going down. As pastors, we've got to transition a little bit too about how we think about helping the community be more humanitarian. So I think a lot of us in our line of work have got to really begin to think about how do we figure out the transition of our communities, because it's not a straightaway, and we've got to become surrogate parents and social workers and counselors and coaches. And I know you're seeing that in your work as well, that we've got to be responsive in how we go about serving our communities, because they're changing as well. It's not a straightaway.
Yeah, the church is in a transformative situation. Just like much of our world is. I think that our world is really fighting for her identity. She's fighting for her soul. And I'm talking about the United States of America.
Right.
And in a very interesting way, so is the Christian church. It's fighting for its identity again. And one of the things that I think I do enjoy seeing is that there seems to be a recapturing of the connection between the clergy and people.
Sure.
Meaning that many clergy members are coming out of their pulpit and leading in community actions, leading in being interactive in the journey of their community.
And you're modeling that. You're modeling that. I know that people are taking your lead, particularly you coming into an established community as a younger pastor when you first started. Yeah. Those older pastors and leaders watched you taking things out to the community and realized these younger people are loving the community perhaps in a way we weren't encouraged to.
Yeah. Well, it's both and, I think. It's both and, because we don't pull this stuff out of our own genius.
Right.
It's really a continuation and a reconnection to something that we always were.
Mm-hmm.
I like particularly that. Particularly from the African American perspective. And I can use my own personal experience. So when I graduated from college, everybody threw me this big, huge party, and everyone sent me cards telling me how proud they were that I was the first one to go to college and graduate, mm-hmm. and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And 10 years or so later, my uncle was doing some work on our family tree, and in his research, he found out that we had some great cousins that were among the first graduating class of Arkansas Pine Bluff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it was very interesting, because what happened was it showed me, when I was reading this, I realized that, one, I wasn't the first person to graduate from college by a long shot. In fact, I probably was like the sixth or seventh. And what I learned also is that the generation before me was the exception to not having graduates, not the norm.
Right.
So what I did, you see what I mean? So what happened was I just picked up a torch or a baton that a previous generation had dropped, because our lineage is that we were educators. And let me tell you
you're just following suit.
Absolutely. Let me tell you the irony behind it is that 90 years later, my major was English literature, and both my great cousins, their major was English literature.
Now that's
how
ironic is that? You're right.
So as I started sharing that with my cousins and with my other siblings, that became infectious in our family, to remind our family, like, hey man, this is who we are. We're people that learn. We're educators, and we have a history of education. And I watched the commitment to education start like wildfire in our family throughout my cousins and
after learning that fact. After learning that fact.
Yeah.
See, that's why we have to learn our own history and teach it, because you're right. We'll just think we're always just starting stuff and don't understand that it's been going on in us, that it's not novel for African Americans to be educated or English lit majors.
If every generation, and this is why I'm saying it's important for us to remind ourselves that, as pastors and young pastors, we are really from the lineage of the pastor who walked out of the pulpit and walked along the street.
Right.
And walked into an affected community. We are much more connected to that group of pastors than the ones who just try to fill up churches and get thousands and thousands of people and fly jets and do all of those types of things. We're much more connected to a generation that infects and that are connected to community than we are to what became somewhat the abnormal aspect of faith in Christianity, which is what we've seen the last 18 to 20 years. And
that's a good reminder.
If we can recapture that, then you're not starting over. And I think that's one of the things that our community has to always reinspect from a historic perspective, because if every generation starts over, every generation is starting over.
Right. That's too much.
But if you can embrace and accept and honor what has happened before you, then you're not starting over. You're building on top of. And we can make progress higher if we keep building on top of instead of every generation restarting.
That's a great reminder, and we've got to we have to teach church history and our cultural history to remind us that this is not new. Hey, you know what? I'm getting my signal that I'm getting close to the end of our time. Let me just take 2 more minutes. I got two questions for you. 3 questions on the extra focus in NFL on concussions. Good thing, bad thing? You glad that's happening? I know you can go on and on, but your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it's an amazing thing. Any way you can make the game safer, it's better, and it's smart and it's intelligent to be able to do so. Football it's a violent game. It's a game that it brings inherently some level of risk in all body parts, and your head included. So,
did you have concussions?
Yeah, I had a few. I had quite a few of them actually. But it's important to be able to have some awareness of it, and I think that as much as safe as they can make the game, I think you should strive to. They would be foolish not to. But also, I think it's important for them to realize, the general public to realize, that most football players know that there is risk involved in playing sports, and they make these choices to play football with their eyes wide open.
And they go into it knowing.
And absolutely, and as long as there are scholarships that are attached to being a good football player, and there are poor communities, there are going to always be people that play football because it's worth the risk for the education and the opportunity to go to the National Football League for many people.
And get out of the community. And one last one, I can only get to one more of them. The kneeling restrictions in NFL. Your gut reaction, are you at liberty to speak about that?
Sure I am. I'm on the team. I think it's the most ridiculous rule that the NFL could have come up with. The NFL has managed to put a wider gulf between its leadership office and the players down on the field. When 74% of your players that are on the field are affected by, and their family members are affected by some of the social issues that they would like to protest about, it just seems logical that the NFL would honor their employment force and in some kind of way stand with them and have conversations with them about how they can support them through and get their voices heard. It's a shame that the guys even had to protest. There should have been other ways that the NFL stood out and helped them make their statement, like the NBA did with their players. Sure. So, but it's still good for dialogue because both groups grow, the players grow, and the National Football League has to grow, and they both will through continuous dialogue. We just want them to know that this is not, we want the NFL to make a statement that says that we stand with society and our players and not just about the temporary dollars that they make from the contracts that they have with the military.
No, man, that's good. That's really good because I've been wanting to ask you that. So listen, Dr. Fletcher, I'm really appreciative that you're on the show today. I know it's extra early on the West Coast, but I know you're an early riser. But man, I appreciate you. My special guest today has been Terrell Fletcher, thought leader, pastor, former NFL star, just doing a number of things. Humanitarian. He spent times overseas. You and I went to Africa together to take a look at some humanitarian efforts. So just know that I wish you all the best. I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you. When you're the 21-year-old guy, I knew that you're going to do tremendous things. So it's good to look back after 20 plus years and see that you're doing what you said you were going to do. You continue to make your parents proud, your family, your community, your congregation, the league. And so keep up the great work. And I hope that our paths cross more in the near future, because I need some Terrell Fletcher time, because I probably need to jump off of some things. It's been stressful out here, so I need to probably jump off some things or into some things. So let's make sure we get some time together so we can hang out. But man, thank you for being my special guest. You did an excellent job today, and good luck in all the great work and all your great endeavors. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Alex. I love you much. Thank you so
I love you too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. You can find out more about Dr. Alex G's amazing work at www.alexg.com. Black Like Me is sponsored by the generosity of the Human Family Unity Foundation.